Let's talk RFAs, and those are obviously a big piece to what the Ducks hope is a very fruitful future, maybe the next couple of years or so down the line. But this is a business. How hard is it for a young player to kind of learn the business side of things the first time around?
I think there's a contract negotiation or two for every young player before that realization, that lesson really comes home to you, because players do have a difficult time adjusting to, hey, I had a really strong season. This appears to be a great fit with the club. Of course, negotiations are just going to fall into place naturally, and I'll get what I want. And get what I want, you know, the player gets a sense of that from looking elsewhere around the league. He compares himself to another player or two or more and thinks, hey, this is market value for me. This is the number I ought to bring down. This is the kind of term I ought to bring down.
That guy.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. So, you know, from the club's point of view, you know, this is the common refrain coming out of arbitration, which is a different dynamic than one we're talking about. But when a club takes a hardline position and starts saying things about you that aren't necessarily terribly flattering, it can really be humbling.
But then you got to go back and play for that team.
You got to go back. So for every player, and a good vet in that room for a young player going through it, will be able to kind of impart that wisdom and say, hey, look at this is the way business is transacted. Don't take that personal. Sort through your business, get yourself back on the ice. It all looks after itself. Don't take it personal is an important takeaway in a negotiation like this.
You were telling us earlier you went through something like this when you signed in Nashville. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it was. And you know, it kind of creates, there's this dynamic. I was an unrestricted free agent when I was in Nashville, so it's different than a restricted free agent where, you know, the club, Verbeek and his Ducks, will have an asset even if it doesn't work out. You've got this asset that you can deploy elsewhere for value. It was different for me. But the point really comes down to that I took out of the Nashville negotiation, and David Poyle said these things to me. I was the one taking the hard line, and David kind of makes this point, hey, can you move our direction a little ways? Can you leave the Nashville Predators kind of feeling good about the transaction at the end of the day? Things resolved, we came to terms, but that was always a takeaway for me. So the point for the club, I think, in this situation that Verbeek may want to contemplate to some degree, you know, remember, you've got some younger players here. Taking that fire and brimstone, that scorched earth point of view may not always be the optimal approach, especially for a pair of young guys here that, you know, walk into it with just a different set of expectations, perhaps.
And speaking of young guys, we saw that projected lineup this season for the Anaheim Ducks. You've got Zegras, McTavish, and then Leo Carlsson, who was just selected second overall in the last draft here in Nashville. What should expectations be for Anaheim Duck fans here this season? Because last year, look, it's a rebuild. They're part of it, right? So where are they this year now? Yeah,
I think another step forward. I really do. I don't know. And remember, you know, I think we'd all accept that just from an organic point of view, the assets that they have on roster, the way they're built right now, Anaheim's bound to take a step forward. I think they'll be more competitive this year. But remember, as that's happening, we're seeing a host of teams in the Pacific Division also improve, specifically last year. So a tougher division for sure. I don't know if a playoff spot's in the cards for these Anaheim Ducks this year, but I expect these guys, you know, the Drysdales, the Zegrases of this roster to add another 15 to 20% to what they do, what they contribute.
And it'll be great to see what Jamie Drysdale can contribute, because we haven't seen a whole lot of him as a National Hockey Leaguer just based on the injury that he suffered. What are your expectations for him on the blue line? Because by all accounts, should have high expectations.
Yeah, and I think now a guy, I mean, assuming he can put the injury behind him and assuming he can be healthy for substantially all of an 82-game schedule, he's been around long enough. He's got a good feel for what the NHL schedule, the calendar is all about, the level of competition, what it takes to be at your best each and every night. So there's a lot of learning that's gone on, even distinct from what happens on the ice. I expect a real solid year from Drysdale, no question.
All right, we'll have to see. Just 8 games last year for Jamie Drysdale as a member of the Anaheim Ducks.